Welcome to the Bumblebee Library. Today's video is going to be different than normal because instead of talking about video games, we're going to be talking about a Lord of the Rings character who's currently making headlines because he appeared standing next to Jeff Bezos's Gandalf and is going to be appearing in the next season of Rings of Power. This character, of course, is Tom Bombadil. And in this video, I'm going to be arguing why he's sus. We'll explore a few excerpts from the book, as well as a quote from an analysis of the Tom Bombadil poem. These will highlight red flags that the Tom Bombadillo fan club loves to ignore when they're busy complaining about why he's not in the movies. After this video, you may be looking at that old man in the woods a little bit different. The first part I want to talk about is how Tom came across Frodo and the hobbits in the old forest while they're trying to get to Bree. Of course, in this scenario, Tom finds the hobbits being smothered by a tree named Old Man Willow, and he sings a song to the tree, and the tree lets them go. Now, let's go over a few quotes from this moment. Now keep in mind, this is immediately after the hobbits are saved by Tom. After each hobbit says thank you for him saving them, he says, "Well, my little fellows, you shall come home with me. The table is all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. I don't know about you, but if a guy rolled up in a van at a playground and started talking to people like that, it's not going to be long until someone beats his ass." And after being too surprised and too relieved to talk, the hobbits followed after him as fast as they could. Now, this is something that can be overlooked as an exaggeration on my end. However, skipping ahead a couple pages, Frodo asks Tom how he came about finding them while they were being smothered by the tree. And it may surprise you that his answer is a little defensive. Tom stirred like a man shaken out of a pleasant dream. What?" said he. "Did I hear you calling? Nay, I did not hear. I was busy singing. Just chance brought me then, if chance you call it. It was no plan of mine. Though I was waiting for you." This response raises several red flags for me. First, like I said, it sounds very defensive. Second, he contradicts himself, says it was by complete chance that they came across each other, but then mentions that he was waiting for him. He continues, "We heard news of you and learned that you were wandering. We guessed you'd come here, long down to the water. All paths lead that way, down to the Withywindle." So, did Tom really just happen by chance to save them? Or was their attack by Old Man Willow a premeditated, pre-orchestrated event that Tom Bombadil masterminded in order to gain the trust of the hobbits? It seems pretty weird to me that a basic question from Frodo like that would stir Tom like a man shaken out of a pleasant dream. After they're done following Tom and they get to his house, this is the description of their meal. "Though the hobbits ate as only famished hobbits can eat, there was no lack. The drink in their drinking bowls seemed to be clear cold water, yet it went to their hearts like wine and set free their voices." Yikes. The guests became suddenly aware that they were singing merrily as if it was easier and more natural than talking. So, are we just to overlook the fact that Tom Bombadil is clearly drugging the hobbits in their first meal with him? I'm not overlooking it. Not only did the water that Tom was giving these hobbits alter their minds, but it went further than that. The hobbits, under the spell of Tom's words, may have missed one meal or many, but when the food was before them, it seemed at least a week since they had eaten. In what scenario is a hobbit forgetting about a meal? Seems very strange to me. This whole interaction with Tom and the hobbits from the beginning pretty much until they leave his house sounds pretty sus. And if I had kids, I would not want them hanging around a guy like this. The next major source of red flags for Tom Bombadil centers around his wife, Goldberry. Now, I know people love to romanticize Goldberry and Tom's relationship, but while I was reading through it, I could not ignore some glaring details that made me feel very icky about them being together. Let's start with the first quote we see of Tom talking to her. Tom and the hobbits both make it to their house. They enter through the door, and this is the first thing he says to Goldberry. "Here's my pretty lady," he said, bowing to the hobbits. "Here's my Goldberry, clothed in all silver green with flowers in her girdle. Is the table laden? I see yellow cream and honeycomb and white bread and butter, milk, cheese, and green herbs, and ripe berries gathered. Is that enough for us? Is supper ready?" Now, I'm not going to say I wouldn't be excited about a meal that Goldberry made either, because it sounds delicious, but for the first introduction that we get of them talking, he asks, "Is dinner ready?" That is sus. Next, we're going to examine how Goldberry describes Tom and see if it doesn't sound weird to you. He is the master of the wood, water, and hill. The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master. Which is funny because this happens right before he walks in the door and asks her if dinner's ready. To me, there's a lot of strange things going on between Tom and Goldberry. First and foremost, the fact that he's the old man in the forest and she is the river daughter. Just listen how he describes how long he's been around. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before kings and the Graves and the Barrow-wights. Then, when the elves passed westward, Tom was here already. Before the seas were bent, he knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the Dark Lord came from outside. We're talking several thousand years old minimum. What's even worse is how they met and how they became wed. In his book, J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the century, Tom Shippey, who's a Lord of the Rings expert, in describing Tom's adventures, Shippey highlights 4 encounters that shaped Tom. We're going to focus on the first one. Quote, "In the first, he is pulled into the river by Goldberry, the river woman's daughter." Skipping forward, "And then the next morning, he goes back again, this time to capture Goldberry in his turn and take her off to be married." Do you think that's cool? I don't. So, where are we at now? An old guy who's been around for thousands of years, living in a forest, goes down to the river, finds someone called the River Daughter, captures her, and makes her his wife, to which she then refers to him as master. Huh? This is the guy everyone loves. I understand that people love Tom Bombadil. He's an allegory, he's a metaphor, he's a representation of different spirits in mythology. I get it. All I'm saying is, if you read between the lines, he seems pretty sus. And I'm not saying he's straight up predator, but he's also not my first round draft pick to be monitoring the schoolyard during lunchtime. Let me know what you think about Tom Bombadil in the comments. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, do what everyone else says at this point in the video, and we'll see ya.